Welcome to Salty Investors, episode number 48. It is Friday, September 15th. How are you going this beautiful Friday, Tim?
Yeah, great. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good. Beautiful sunny weather. Be out there in a minute after we get through the important stuff. So I'm going to lead off because I was slack last week, didn't do any salt. I've got some salt this week. So on Monday, the Australian Renewables Industry Summit was held in Canberra, surprise, surprise, at which key stakeholders called on the federal government for a $100 billion investment into the renewable energy sector. Now, to be clear, the stakeholders were renewable lobby groups and trade unions, better known as rent seekers. And investment means, for the uninitiated, a handout. Interestingly, the Australian taxpayer was not mentioned as a stakeholder, even though it would be their $100 billion at stake. Now, the justification is, well, other governments around the world are doing it, so we should too. Now, Tim, if this was such a brilliant investment, then it wouldn't need government money, would it? Wouldn't private investment just be flooding in to take advantage of such a lucrative opportunity? Oh, and by the way, the nuclear is too expensive.
Oh, yeah. So we've got to ban that just to make sure it doesn't get through. Just make sure it's not an option. And yeah. Typical rent seekers. So I don't know. What can you do about them? I think they're gonna win this one for sure. I think there's a good chance a heap of government money is coming their way. So,
I mean, because you will get a renewables energy sector if you throw enough money at it. Doesn't mean it'll make any money. It doesn't mean, and it will provide jobs. But yes. Of course, the thing is, what's the opportunity cost of putting that money elsewhere? Or what's the opportunity cost of building nuclear reactors? What's a nuclear reactor worth? $10 billion? You can build 10 for that, and you've got coal mines where to build them. You know.
Well, how about just reopen a few coal mines? You know, or a few coal generators. Let's get them running. Yeah. That's not going to cost you that much.
Yeah. No, it's so much truth by assertion. You know, because you should read this verbiage these people use, like, we're following the science and we need to decarbonize. It's like, no, we don't. We don't actually need to decarbonize. And actually, the idea that we are going to decarbonize by 2030 is a myth. We're not. Germany's finding out the hard way. It's just it's not doable. Steve Baxter said, I've seen him on Twitter. He said, this thing just has to burn itself out. That's sort of the lesson I've learned in the last 10 years, is that bad ideas, once they get momentum, there's no stopping them. They just have to burn out on their own momentum. Like diversity, equity, inclusion nonsense. Like that seems to be sort of peaking now. Gradually people understand that there's no evidence that for any of it. It's all bullshit. Same with ESG. ESG actually burned out pretty quickly, didn't it? But they've renamed it now. You see, it's got a different name now. I forget. I read this the other day. They've just changed its name basically because it's so tainted.
Well, it doesn't mean anything. You know, like you got all the tobacco companies getting high ESG ratings. You know, you're like, oh, what the hell? So I don't know. These guys will just keep at it like they normally do, but I think it's got longer legs. This one, I think.
Oh yeah.
Especially we hit a downturn here. What could the government pile money into?
Yeah,
renewable.
Create jobs, job creation program. Let's build batteries that won't power anything.
Yeah. So seems like a shovel-ready project they got there. You know, just on the sidelines. That they can just burn money infinitum. You know, there's unlimited amount of money they can burn into this thing.
Yep. Because it's for a good cause, but that's the old Milton Friedman. Never judge a policy by its intentions. You should judge it by its outcomes, and the outcomes suck. Anyway, let's get on to your salt. What do you got?
I see the Australian Institute has come up with a brilliant plan of bringing back the death taxes. I've gone through this a few times before, and our state's pretty famous for, killing that thing. Sir Joe, I didn't like him in a lot of stuff, but that's one of the things that he, knocked out pretty well, and all the other states had to follow really quick because we were just getting too prosperous over here in Queensland. But that's their solution. Like, we can't tax anybody more. We can't, lift productivity. We can't do anything. We can just tax the dead. And, like you tax to the hilt all the way through your life, and then you got to hand on a few bucks to someone else that you like.
Yeah, I
or in
mean,
your family.
you
They're
can't
going to hit you
even
there
leave
too.
you alone when you're dead. You're dead for fuck's sake. It's still taxing you. My God, what's
Yeah,
going on?
they're trying to sell it, saying, "Oh, look, you don't care, you're dead," But I'm pretty sure people don't just work for themselves. They've got other.
No,
They want to make their
yeah,
children's lives
want to
better
pass
and
it
stuff
on.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I don't know. Just I think they're running out of things to do now. Like they see that
yeah.
they can't lift taxes and they can't, cut spending. Holy hell, don't do that. Like that's just
No, of course not. Well, here in Queensland, we've decided that we want to decommission coal, whilst one of the biggest sources of revenue is actually royalties from coal. You know, it's fucking morons. Like, hey, all those royalties you get from coal? Maybe if you open another coal mine, you might get more royalties. And maybe that would take care of some of your problems. No, let's close it down, and then let's get a death tax in there once the royalties go away. Once we've closed all the coal mines, we'll need some other source of revenue. But no, Tim, you know what it'll be? It'll be the burgeoning renewables industry
that
that we've
save us
created
all.
in the meantime. That will save us all.
Yeah, I know. Oh well.
All right. Enough of that depressing shit. Let's get on to the macro stuff. So, just a quick one. Melbourne Institute consumer sentiment is still in the toilet. Not going in. There's a little blip up there, and it said, "Nah, we're not ready yet. We're going back down again." Unemployment rate in Australia is out now. Scott famously said on this program about a month ago that the unemployment rate would hit 4% by the end of the year. It was flat in, what was that data for? August. I've still got a lot of confidence, and I've got a lot of confidence at going to 4% because of this chart here, Tim.
Okay.
Now, there's a little bit of a break here. I don't know if you can see that, but so that's the ratio of job applications to job ads. So a lot more applications per ad now, which means fewer jobs, or less people just stopped applying for jobs, which is probably unlikely because, as you know, there's a cost of living crisis and people tend to need jobs during these times. So that bottom line, the red line, usually does follow the black line eventually. And I'm expecting it. Look, I might not, predictions are stupid in this game. I made one just for fun. So I reckon it's going north of 4%, whether it happens this year or next year, but it's happening.
Well, that's fairly consensus. Well, they say 4% and then maybe 4.5% next year. So
Yep.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But
Yep. Well, it's just one of those things that people aren't taking into account necessarily. That there's already a lot of stress out there, and when people don't have jobs, there's a record number of people working 2 jobs now.
Yes.
Apparently. So, yes, US CPI came out. Of course, depending on which window you want to look through, it's awful or it's great because the all category is spiking. Look at that, Tim.
Oh,
it's going
wow.
back, but the core is still coming down. So, I mean, this is an artifact of a lot of sort of things falling out.
Yep.
Because of the 12-month rolling things coming in. John Hussman put out because people were saying, look, it's if you just have a 3-month moving average, it's pretty low. And John Hussman said, actually, when it's this low, more than 60% of the time, inflation accelerates again over the next 12 months.
Okay.
That's just historical. So it doesn't mean it's going to happen this time, but yeah, it's not all over. And the Fed's, you would think probably just going to say we need to stay pat for now.
That's right.
Yeah.
But it's sticky. Sticky, like it comes back to that again. So
who said that? I think we did. So all these things here basically what go into the NBER's calculation of how recessions start. So the NBER, National Bureau of Economic Research, are the ones that delineate when recessions start and end in the United States, and actually do it in a very technical way, not like the dumbed down 2 negative quarters of GDP bullshit measure that we use everywhere else. And a lot of those measures are historically looking pretty bad. You see the red line ticked up. That was GDP. It was unexpectedly better last quarter.
Okay.
But everything else is sort of bouncing around that zero line, and that's usually not a good sign. So yeah, there's going to be lots of debates about recessions. The fact is, by the time you're in one, you know it's usually at least halfway through. People won't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, just thought that was interesting because I think the whole recession, soft landing, no landing, maybe it's all just premature. We've been consistently
Well, the
early.
market's thinking that a little bit now as well. It's sort of,
Yeah.
I don't hear that, no landing or, even soft. I think that's lessening a little bit. Everyone's saying next year now for
Yeah.
a recession, but I don't know. Still a
Yeah.
long time to
Yeah.
go. Could get better. So
Yeah. So that's that. And now you've bought some more Chinese junk for us, haven't you, this week?
yeah, just to upset you again. But yeah. This is the last one I'm going to do on this. So it's really hard to find stuff there that I like.
Last week was good.
Yeah. So
Last week's
Nongfu Spring is another red chip company in China. I understand it, and if I look 10 years out, I have a fair amount of confidence that it'll still have market share. It basically sells bottled water, but with a brand, and it's more sticky than most think. Most Chinese don't trust the government with water because the tap water, even though it's regulated and tested, they just don't trust them. Nobody trusts centralized communist control over water, and it's one of the first things you upgrade when you get a few dollars in your pocket. This trend will continue, as I've seen it in Taiwan. This company was founded in 1996, and the founder is touted as the richest man in China the last couple of years anyway. They market it to their strength, as this is spring water, not dissolved or reverse osmosis water, which has no life. They've done some marketing where they put a flower in water, and they showed that it lasted longer compared to reverse osmosis water. The competition complained, and they said, humans aren't plants, so they tested on rats, and the rats lived longer. Obviously, this is a bit of, BS, but this type of, Chinese medicine and health benefits from, certain things, that's now ingrained in their culture. Western companies were way too slow to get into this market. Now they've increased the number of water sources to be closer to the population centers, and they've built out the distribution network. So now they've got one of the lowest priced waters in store, and they've got the distribution network. So if you look at as a competitor, that's nearly impregnable. Like you cannot get in and get a capex return on this. So they're a lowest cost advantage, and they've also got the distribution network. And now, to boost it even more, since they've got that distribution network, they're adding in sparkling water, flavored water, tea, high-end water, juices, milk-based, plant-based. Now,
I was going to ask you what that is over there in the graphic on the end. That's juice, is it?
Yep. So now they've got this distribution network, which they've got their staple, which is, water, and now that no one can compete against. Now they're flowing in, all these other which they're subsidizing.
High-end stuff. Yeah, the high-end sparkling water.
Yep.
As well. Yep.
So good luck being a competitor in this market. Like if you're on a board and you decide, we're going to take on these guys, you'd have to have rocks in your head to do it. But that's why I like this company. So let's look at the fundamentals.
Well,
you're going to say something?
Well, I was going to say I was just going to say because you have to start expanding your product categories because your population is basically going backwards, right? So you're not can rely on reliably, 3 or 4% sales growth because populations are growing a couple of percent and they put their prices up a couple of percent every year.
That's not the returns I'm looking for. Like obviously, you're actually gonna, but you need to. It's sort of like Microsoft. Once they had Windows, they had that base and that customer base that paid all the fixed costs in the business, and then they could just add on extra things like Office and all the business software, but they had that underlying product that just dominated, and from there they're using that same distribution network, and it's not going to cost them any more. So if you look at the fundamentals, we can see that shares outstanding are stable, employees are stable, the multiples are expensive, But you look at the return on invested capital and the margins, and they're insanely high and they're stable for many, many years.
Yeah.
The payout ratio is a bit high. They've got no debt. Growth is great at 13.7%, which is higher than Visa or MasterCard at about 10%. And EPS is at 19.27% compared to 14% for Microsoft. So you can see these extra add-ons.
That growth rate's pretty impressive, given that they're paying out most of their earnings in dividends. So they're not reinvesting that much, but they're still getting good growth. I mean, that's how good's that?
Yeah. So you can see that they're just, because imagine if you built out all the distribution network. It's sort of like Amazon. Once you've built it all out, to add that incremental extra product on there costs you nothing. And then a poor competitor goes, oh, I want to put into some store here. They've got to build out all that infrastructure and the water.
What's the threat here? Is the threat that the Chinese government gets its act together and does create a reliable water source that people?
Well, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Filling up a jug out of the tap and putting it in the fridge,
Because when I went to Taiwan, I'm like, what the hell's going on? Everyone's drinking bottled water. Is the water bad? And they're going, no, it's been good for decades. It's just nobody trusts these guys. It's just
right. Yeah. Well, it's the same in Thailand. Well, I lived in Thailand. Well, actually, that was 20 years ago, and the water was fucking bad. So,
okay,
yeah, but you buy bottled water everywhere, and like people back then. I mean, new Thai houses were only some of them were getting kitchens. Like most of them don't have kitchens. They'd have a little cooktop. They don't have a sink. They might have a sink out the back. For washing stuff, but usually it's just a hose, because I mean you don't actually you would never drink out of a tap, right?
Yeah. So it's a little bit different to us. So the other problem there is expansion. Like obviously you're sort of stuck in China here a little bit. If you flip over to the balance sheet, like this is where I love these sort of companies. They've got heaps of cash, net debt of 22 billion, negative 22 billion. Look at the cash flow. Operating cash flow had low growth last year, but it's still up 300% over 6 years.
Yeah.
And free cash flow is just kicking the same goals. Like if you saw this in the West, like this would be insane. The bear case is
multiple. I mean, it's on 45 times. It'd be on 150 times if it was Australian company.
So the bear case is China's uninvestable, demographic issues, as you mentioned. They are communists. Water is a commodity. It's expensive, high payout ratio. But the bull case is everyone hates China. Premium water will have a market in 10 years. The cost of goods sold and the brand moat are fairly good. It's got tons of tag-along products, premiumization in China, recession resistant and easy to understand, great ROI, margins and growth. The valuation is a bit high at PE 45, but under 30, 30% drop. I think it's, something interesting. I think everybody can understand it.
Has it been that low before? Like, has it been as low?
As you can see, it only IPO'd in 2020, sorry.
Righto.
Yep. So we don't have, great. But I think it, Chanos is coming out saying, oh, China's a piece of crap, like he's like, just hope that guy wins.
He's been saying that for a while.
Yeah, 2010 he's been saying that. So for a little while he's been on that bandwagon. But yeah, it seems if that grabs hold, you want to pick up something.
I think with Jim Chanos, he's very often right. He's just, but timing is not always because that's the hardest thing. Yeah.
So, but if this place does half burn down to the ground, everyone's going, everything's so expensive in the US. What do you buy, Tim? Nothing you can buy. Well, you're supposed to be looking at places that are half burning to the ground. And if this burns down a little bit more, why aren't you? This is the guy who owns this is, the richest guy in China. Like, obviously this works. Like, and it's pretty impregnable. Like and everyone just looks at it as like, he sells water. Like, how much margin can you make on water? But
apparently pretty good.
Yeah, well, look at the margins there. Like,
gross margins and 30 in the operating. Yeah, it's not bad.
Yep. Yeah. compare that to an Australian company, like you just, just, and it's not that hard to understand. It's water and juice, and we've been through this in the West, what 100 years ago. So, like, the people who grab that sort of real estate and hold it, they do pretty good. So, yep, just another one. The last one, people. I'm not going to hit you with China anymore. So.
It's a good one. I think the last two have been good. I don't mind. I like this. It looks good to me. Just as usual. Let's get greedy. We want lower prices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I guess the story, I mean, China doesn't have much good news coming out of it. People have been burnt in emerging markets. They've been told for the last sort of, 10, 15 years since the financial crisis, emerging markets are much cheaper, and the returns just haven't come.
Yeah.
So maybe it's a case of, maybe this time it will actually happen.
But don't rely on that. Get yourself a discount, and then, they're still communists. Just remind yourself of that. There's a heap of bad stuff that goes on there, and the demographics and debt, and Janos isn't wrong. Like, he is right. I don't fight the guy, but, you pick this up at 25 times, I'm pretty sure you're going to be all right. But, wait for the discount. Yeah.
All right, good one. Tim brings the goods again. He's done it again, and we'll see you next week without another Chinese stock. Bye for now.